All right, what's happening, everyone? Conversation with Coaches, episode 5. I get to be joined by Tricia King, better known as Fatness Ever Eats on Instagram. A unique name, but we'll go over her comprehensive history here. As I put in the notes, she is a cancer survivor, a mother of 2 girls. She has a BS in mathematics computation. She can go over it. I know she used to tutor people. She just joined, so there's the view request button. She does nutrition, the power to herself at an international elite level at some of the biggest meets in the world. Most recently, I think the last meet she did was Ghost Clash. So we'll go over a lot of information with her. And usually,
All right, I think I figured it out.
technology.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Everything is good with you?
Yeah, it's just been a busy day. Became an official Floridian today, so
Yeah.
no big deal.
That's not as cool as becoming like an official American, but you're an official Floridian, so now you're officially weird.
Yeah, it feels that way. Got instantly weirder the second I walked out of the DMV.
Yeah, Florida's a whole other country.
Feels
So,
that way.
all right, let's go over a few things here. I was mentioning that obviously your mom, cancer survivor. I know at one point your weight loss journey is phenomenal. I don't want to say 100 pounds, but it's pretty close.
And pretty close. My heaviest, I was 211 to 214. I guess depends on like what scale I was using. And then like the lightest I got down to was 129.
So almost 90 pounds, drastic life difference. Obviously, we've survived cancer, which we'll go over a little bit. You fell
Yes.
in love with powerlifting, which you became an athlete at. And
Mm-hmm.
if you follow Tricia for a while, you know there's many Tricia things that Tricia can do, like handstand walks and cartwheels and all kinds of weird things.
Lots of little isms.
I know you have a background in mathematics, computation. What was it?
Yeah, it's a Bachelor of Science in Computational Mathematics, which basically is like the intersection of like math, statistics, optimizing like computer science. Basically, it solves like problems with like business, finance, medical field, any of the, like the STEM stuff. And like the best example I could like, not that it's even lifting related or whatever, but like for anyone to just like understand like if anyone knows what a logic gate is, and it's like any microprocessor we use has one, and it basically like makes the like operational pathways like go through that direct circuit, so that way we get like all the computations from the like data given to it, like prints it out or whatever, gives it to whoever needs to read it.
Well, we're going to get to that in a second as far as power. That's an interesting relationship with powerlifting that most people don't realize, data collection and processing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. You do nutrition coaching for athletes and you do
Mm-hmm.
programming for athletes. So let's go with when you first heard you had cancer and what that entailed.
Okay, so I've actually had it more than once. I've had it 3 times
Ooh.
through different parts of my life. The most recent, which was the only time I've had it during powerlifting, was the end of like 2018 or around middle to throughout like the last half of like 2018. And I was in meet prep and just kind of, I was working with Stacy at that time, and we kind of found something that would work so I didn't have to have surgery just yet between her and my oncologist, and kind of like all of that powerlifting stuff with cancer. I just had surgery because it was super like maintainable and then fixable through the surgery for the third time.
That was before you, or one in the process of you losing all the weight, correct?
That was, I would say it was after I'd lost all the initial weight, because at that point I was already at a 148. Or I guess I was like actually when I did start 148 because I was losing a whole bunch of weight, and that's actually when I started. I don't know if we can talk about it on
Yeah.
this, but that's when I started Anavar.
Anything you
Was
like, it's free range. But yeah, non-tested guys and ladies do it better. We all know that.
but yeah, that's actually when I started taking Anavar. Was even though I was like a newer athlete. For people who don't know, it's actually was originally made for people going through breast cancer. And even though that's not the type of cancer I had, it was for the same reason, to help maintain muscle mass and keep the weight on. So I wasn't like, because I was just throwing up all the time and I was so sick and I couldn't keep food down and I was atrophying and just like very ill. And that, along with just like eating a whole bunch, is what helped me maintain a little bit of weight. And I was able to like get to like 140, 145. And so that was my first like 148.
That's interesting that you brought that up because years ago, before anyone on this podcast will remember, but there was Professor X or Dr. X, who was also a doctor who was suffering from an autoimmune disorder, a disease, and he wrote a lot about the treatment of HIV patients, cancer patients, and people with disorders who were being prescribed Anavar to prolong their life and their muscle mass so they didn't waste away. They had wasting syndromes, basically. So it's interesting you brought that up because that was very progressive medicine at the time.
Yeah, so like although I didn't get it prescribed by my oncologist just because like it's not something that they use in the United States for that, or else it would be legal here,
Hmm.
kind of like TRT is. But I was open with my oncologist because they needed to know things like that, and then I was able to obviously like keep in communication with my coach and my doctor and get feedback of my own for like so that way I knew how to move forward with it. But it was basically what was like keeping my head above water during that time.
And that sounds like the computational mathematic mindset coming in of let's find remedies, let's find solutions, and let's see how this works and test and apply.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And like during that time too, it wasn't like I just like, oh, it's a magic like drug. I was doing a bunch of like holistic ways too, just like things, making sure that my endocrine system and my hormones and everything were as like healthy as they were like they were probably better taken care of at that point in my life than they are right now.
it's, it's a journey all the way through. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that you mentioned that because that became an analytical mindset of what can I do to help myself? What can I do to further this along? Let's talk about that as you went through powerlifting and you became a powerlifter. It became a little bit, I know you very personally, so I have an advantage, but it became a little bit less about helping yourself and a lot more about helping other people. What
Yeah.
brought you towards coaching?
Well, so what originally brought me towards coaching was I went through like a pretty significant life change and I needed a job. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I was looking to change that and I needed a job. So I went and got a job at Crunch, which is like just a global gym. I'm sure everyone's heard of them by now. They're popping up everywhere. So I got certified, like NASM certification through that, and I started like working with people and just like the general population at a global gym is a bunch of, especially during the time of day when I could do it when my kids were at school, was a bunch of moms, like stay-at-home moms who had kind of been in the same situation I was, and they had gained all this weight, or they were unhappy with themselves, or they didn't like that they couldn't keep up with their kids or all that. And I was like, dang, like I feel that. I can relate to that. And since I was already powerlifting and that was just like my like day job, I was like, okay, like how can I help these people? Because you're working at a global gym, you have them for 30 minutes. And I finally talked to one of my female clients at the time to like put a barbell on her back because it was okay. At that point, like those people don't necessarily need to be like strength training to lose weight. They just people like that just need to move because they don't move enough. Like we all know that part. But I was like, okay, but in order to get them to keep coming or to feel good enough about themselves to care enough to keep doing this, whether it's with me or just on their own, I want them to feel empowered and to like feel something. So I finally got my one of my female clients to put a barbell on her back, and she like learned she was so much stronger than she thought she was. She thought she was not even going to be able to stand up with like 65 pounds. So she wound up like being able to stand up with like 135 pounds, like from a box because she had never had a barbell on her back. So I was
Sure.
and she stood up and was just like, "Oh my gosh, how much is that?" And I told her, I was like, "It's over 100 pounds. It's 135 pounds. Like, that's how much you weigh." Like, because she was just like skinny fat, as whatever. I'm gonna get canceled. But
Not
and,
conditioned to strength training. We'll call it that. How's that?
there you
Very,
go.
very Tricia.
Yeah, and so she like that look on her. I was like, this is what I want to do. I don't care about anything else, but like I know how this person's feeling and I helped her feel the same way I felt. And so I like started like slowly like implementing more barbell training. And at that time I also had stopped training in my garage and started going to an actual powerlifting gym. And that's when I learned how much atmosphere can make a difference depending on where you're at in your mental or emotional or whatever part of that training means to you. Like atmosphere can make a big difference. Anyone knows that from like a hype training environment to like a dead silent third attempt deadlift. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'm going to do this really dumb thing that's really scary, and I'm going to quit my job that I just like I had to have, and I'm going to train instead of the them getting all my money. I'm going to get my money, and so I talked to a few people, and I got like 6 of my clients at the time to go and cross over to this new scary gym that they'd never been to that doesn't have like had black walls and green walls and all this stuff, and it wasn't like Ariana Grande playing on like the speakers. And when I saw that they trusted me enough to do that, I was like, okay, I can help people and actually like not line someone else's pockets, which means I can help them longer. So instead of having them for 30 minutes, I could have them like 30 minutes 3 times a week or an hour twice a week, something that was like basically equaling the same amount they were already paying a gym and they could pay me and then I'd pay like Actually, at that time, I was lucky enough the gym owner didn't charge rent or anything. But like at this time, like I could have been able to pay them still less than like the other gym was collecting. And so I just felt like I gathered all this stuff I'd learned and all this stuff, and I slowly just like got to where I was able to quit the global gym and just like start slowly building my business for myself.
So a lot to unpack there, which is really cool. So let's just backtrack a little bit for people who may have missed some segments here. It is getting told that you have the possibility of dying and resolving to live, which you don't know how strong, we all want to be strong. It's the power of sports, transport. I lift this, I lift that. And you literally had to lift your spirit because your other option was death. So it's like, this is how strong I can be. And then you change career courses, like you said, got involved. Recognize there's a need for people in the same niche of moms who are stay-at-home moms or who have kids and small kids and needing to feel empowered about themselves. And you felt empowered with the barbell. You shared that empowerment with the woman. You put the barbell in the back. Starting with a very beginner, you taught her how to box squat, which again, a lot of people will shit can a box squat, but that was the very beginner move for her, which lit up her world. And pretty much started your coaching business as far as training other women and now men too, but training other women at the time to power lift. So you realize your strength and resolve. You pass that on to other people as far as you can be just as empowered through this mechanism of a barbell and allow me to help you, and I will, because a lot of coaches always ask, how do you get started? Well, and I always tell people, help people.
Yeah,
because if you can't help people or show people, you can't help anyone, and you're certainly not going to help yourself. So you overcame that fear of life. You empowered other women, and then you took that same resolve that showed I have no fear of anything anymore. I've conquered the worst, and quit your job and said, I'm going to make this work.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a lot of like trying to figure out who I was, what I wanted, and what I needed. And it's just like that point A to point B and how to get there and still like keep the goal in mind and not make it too selfish.
Again with the computation. I argue this with Titus myself. I was like, I hate math. I'm like, you don't understand how valuable it is. I'm like, yeah, you're never going to do algebra, but you're going to do some basic computations in life, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like the crazy thing is I was originally going for an engineering degree and I just really decided I didn't like math. And so I got to it and I was like, I took it to the academic advisor. I was like, what can I do with what I have now? They're like, well, with 2 more classes, you can get these courses. And I looked, I was like, I guess I'm getting a degree in math.
Yeah, well, math, the word it's taught is the problem. Like, these are math problems. And we're just these are problems, and these are numerical problems. And I look at it as these are solutions. These are computations to find solutions towards the goal. These are math solutions, not math problems. I don't love, trigonometry and algebra, but I do love doing a basic enough math to solve the riddle of how do I get someone who wants a 400-pound squat to a 500-pound squat. What do I have
Exactly. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
The word riddle, like once I was able to like turn everything into like, okay, like, is this gonna, if I don't figure this out, is this gonna matter in 5 years or not? And if it does, okay, let's figure it out now. And it's like a riddle because it seems very confusing, but it's actually very clear.
Yep.
You just have to look at it the right way. Or if it's not gonna matter in 5 years, can I put it off until like another month or a year from now and take more time to figure out how this is gonna affect everything?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So riddle is like the best way. If people can look at like a problem as a riddle instead of like an issue they have to solve, then it becomes a little bit easier for the brain to comprehend because it takes that like negative tone out of it.
One of my favorite ways to solve the riddle that you obviously help a lot of people with as well is nutrition aspect. And you will write nutrition programming and nutrition consulting for athletes as far as putting their macros together. But I know you tend to be a very much a hippie and a natural foods enthusiast is probably cringing at the fact that I'm drinking an energy drink that has like artificial sweeteners right now.
It's okay. I'm a Coke Zero, so it has a lot of artificial. Like it's half hippie, so
half hippie, occasional hippie.
Yeah.
And how does that relate? Because I know that's important to your health. You do it to maintain your general health and wellness because of your history. How do you relate that to athletes, the importance of their nutrition and at least having the basic understanding? Like the lowest hanging fruit is understanding what your protein goal targets are, understanding what your carbohydrates should be, fat should be, because that maintains your hormone, and how important nutrition is towards recovery.
So whenever they come to me and they're already overthinking everything because they just saw someone on an IFBB Pro stage talk about whatever it was they saw, and it's the new fad thing that's getting all these big people like in shape, or all these things they see Amino Asylum, like nothing against Amino Asylum, they have great products, but like they see this and like they don't even have like their sleep down, or like you said, their nutrition, they don't even understand their nutrition. And it's just one of those like, okay, I'm telling them to like totally drop everything away and like focus on the nutrition and why and what their goals are. So when they come to me and they're like, okay, so these are the macros. I'll lay it out, explain like you did with the fat and everything like that, how to track it, why they're tracking it that way. And then when they come to me in 2 weeks and they're like, I'm still not like seeing anything, then I'm like, okay, well, like, let's talk about like maybe the type, the quality instead of quantity. Now that we figured out quantity, let's look at the quality of what you're putting in, because everyone gets so hung up on macros and not thinking about like micros or other chemicals that they possibly could be putting in their bodies that are slowing them down or making them feel this way, or they might have a sensitivity to. So I really kind of explain it to them as like walking on the outside of the store, and just like that's where the least processed stuff is. Because if you think about it, when you walk into the store, the first thing you guys are going to see is either produce or a bakery or something fresh. Like
Right.
it's either produce, dairy, meat, stuff like that. And then when you start going down those aisles, aside from excuse me, aside from rice and beans and stuff like that, most of that's all packaged and on the shelf, which if it's shelf stable, it probably has a lot of preservatives, which again, like half hippie, so I'm not saying I eat like 100% fully clean, but I do read my labels and I try to teach my athletes and my clients how to read a label to make better choices, because it's not even like sometimes it's easy for us to say like, oh, people are just lazy. Well, yes, they are a lot of times, but like, is someone really lazy if they're just uneducated? Like for me, biggest thing for me was like growing up, I grew up pretty like poor. And so I wasn't taught to read a label. It was, for one, between it being the 90s, being poor, a mom that worked like long hours. It was a lot like frozen. I talk about them all the time, like
Yeah.
chicken voila. There were these frozen chicken cheese pasta meals. That was what we ate, or we ate peanut butter toast, or we ate cereal, or anything that was like quick, and it was not like I was never taught like, oh, it was always good food, bad food, and that was all there was. So that like mindset that everyone gets stuck in, like where it becomes hyper restrictive, which can turn into like other issues. So whenever I started losing weight originally, I taught myself nutrition. I totally stripped everything away, and I learned what my body needed, why my body needed it, and now I try to like pass that on to athletes so they have an understanding. So it's not just someone telling them this is what you have to eat in order to get your goals, but this is why you need to like focus on this, aside from, because people get hung up on the same thing with hydration. Well, I always ask, well, how's your sleep? How's your hydration? And everyone's like, I'm drinking a gallon of water. Okay, but like hydration goes past just water. What have you like been too sweaty and not replenishing your electrolytes or all that kind of stuff? So just like whatever knowledge I've gained from my own journey is what I'm trying to pass on to them, so that way they can like have it for themselves and be more proactive in their own journey.
I know you're an active learner because I see you share a lot of things from your stories sometimes of different sources. So let's go over a couple different sources here, because people always ask, what should I read? And I don't love the question because it's hard to say one thing. But I'd love to
Exactly.
ask other people what they might read because they can share a resource with someone who might not be familiar with it. So let's start with general health and wellness, because you did talk about nutrition labels and food choices. Where are some sources of things that people can learn from that?
Currently, right now, I would definitely, just because of the day and times of internet and Instagram, there's so much free knowledge, whether it's you or anyone else who's posting free information out there. If people aren't following Gabby, I don't know everyone's handles, but like Gabby,
Gabby Powerlift.
there you go. I couldn't remember if it was just Lifts or Powerless, but she provides a whole bunch of great information about nutrition. Lane Norton was like one I've been following for a while, which he was one of those at the beginning, just because like I was still not as open to accepting my own flaws and faults. He kind of like upset me, and I fat burnered him for like a long time because I felt like,
He's right up front with his opinion. He does not sugarcoat.
yeah, and if you're feeling down on yourself, like that was like one of those, oh no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, but like now, like I do like to refer him to people, or like even reading stuff he writes. I think he has like a newsletter I'm like subscribed to that always has a bunch of like up-to-date research that he's seen or been sharing with people. Emery got me into the Huberman Lab, which they do a lot of stuff because Peter Tia and Huberman, they all have like this longevity stuff. Like that's their goal, and like preaching that and how to live longer and healthier and have like a better quality of life. They provide a whole bunch of reading material that you can click on, and links in their like in like the description of their podcast and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So that currently is what I've been reading, and also like sharing. Like I have a group chat for like my athletes as optional. So about half of them are in there, and I'll share it on there too if I see something that's like, all right, you guys need to listen to this.
Ah,
So
interesting.
right now, like most of the stuff I refer to people is all like through, I believe everyone I mentioned other than Gabby is a doctor, but she is like a nutritionist. So I refer a lot of those links and those research just because they're digestible. Because when I look into stuff and go looking for more information and to keep learning, some of it's not as easily digestible for people who are still learning. And I think a lot of those, whether it's influencers or just people relevant in that realm, they make it a little bit more digestible for like the average person
Yeah,
to
a lot
kind of
of
comprehend.
a lot of learning resources are speaking in scientific terminology or anatomical terminology. It's very difficult. People tune that out. They don't break it down and digest it. That's always my
Yeah,
goal when I'm doing videos is to make it as digestible as possible to anyone. So I understand that.
yeah.
So those are good nutrition sources. What about resources as far as you mentioned having a certification with National Academy of Sports Medicine, which for those unfamiliar is a very unique training certification because it's almost borderline. I don't want to say it's almost physical therapy, but they use physical therapy terminology with synergistic dominance and reciprocal inhibition, elastic equivalency training. There's a lot of terms that they use that you don't get from, let's say, an ACE certification or an ISSA
I have to
PhD
say.
certification. Yeah, they will start using a lot more medical terminology, planes of motion, actions, direction. So you really learn a lot of things that you would learn at a higher level as opposed to just your basic training certification, which teaches you how to not hurt people. Um, it basically is extending the form of movement science at that point. So beyond that, what do you like to learn about strength and movement and exercise selections and programming and things like that?
Again, just because like where everything is, like following you and watching your stuff, or just like seeing like whether it's the PT initiative or any of the other hundreds of PT like sources out there, or other like Ashley Contorno or
Mm-hmm.
however I can't. She,
Veggie lifter.
yeah, there you go, Instagram.
I'm on a roll today. I'm 3 for 3.
There you go. I just like really suck with names, whether it's Instagram handles or real life
I was
names. But
about
if
to
I've
say,
seen you, I'll remember you.
I'll forget their real life name and remember their Instagram name at this point.
Yeah. But she posts a lot of stuff that's powerlifting related just because she is a chiropractor, right? She's like, or a
Doctor physical
doctor,
therapy.
physical therapy, something. I knew it was one of those two. So she posts a lot of stuff and then like how to like unfuck it and then why you should do it certain ways. So she posts that stuff and those are things like I'll also, there's just like so many, like I can't even remember, like Rehab Hero. There's even the knees over toes guy. Like I don't agree with everything he says, but like he provides like a whole bunch of good stuff. And it's just one of those two, I guess, like me saying not agreeing with everything is something that I think people do need to take into consideration. Like they don't need to get married to like one account or one source of information, one YouTube channel, and that's like their gospel. Like just kind of like taking what applies
That's
and.
important because people forget context matters. And yeah, Ben Patrick with knees over toes is someone whose field is predominantly basketball performance
Mhm.
and jumping height.
Yeah.
And yeah, the underlying tone is better knee health through better ankle function and hip stability, but at the same time, his target market is basketball players,
Yeah,
not power lifters. So there are certain things that yes can definitely be applied and
yeah,
useful. Like you said, it doesn't become gospel.
yeah, exactly. So I think when people get so hung up on that, it just becomes where they get overwhelmed and confused. But if you can get really good at like just weeding through your like material that you've found and figuring it out, like that's what I've done for myself. Like, okay, this is what my athletes or myself or someone I know or someone I could possibly work with is going to go through, then like it's worth me listening to and reading about. Like, honestly, like, I've had so many injured, like, people come to me for coaching in the last year just because I've had a couple that are like, oh my God, like, I feel so much better now. And so
Mhm.
whether that's me, like, asking another coach I know or looking it up on YouTube and watching hours of, like, physical therapists or chiropractors or something, like, explaining how to do it or self-release this or just,
That's
like,
interesting. You brought up something that a lot of coaches and a lot of the athletes overlook. Instead of getting like you said, you ask more questions, but you immediately research what their issue was to find strategies to help them through it. Not just having the confidence say, yeah, we'll work around it, because a lot of people will do that. Yeah, we'll just work around it until it gets better, or not even acknowledge it, or refer them off to somebody else and never care if follow they even did it. You took the time to research their issue, create strategies, and then say, hey, let's test. and not rush and see, and that's good coaching.
Yeah, thank you. I learned from. No, I'm just kidding. Um, but it's just like one of those like I feel not even from like a money because like I hate to say like we look at our athletes as, but we do. That's how we pay our bills. That's our livelihood. So while I care about them as a lifter and a person, I'm also looking like how can I make their experience the best so I can retain them as a client long term. Because the difference between a personal trainer and a coach, there's a million things. But like one of the biggest ones is if you're a personal trainer for like a gen pop and you still have your client for a year from now, you're not doing your job. You're not teaching them how to be healthier.
Right.
Like unless they're just paying you for accountability. But if you're a coach, you have more of a reason for them to keep you around, in my opinion, because you're like training them for a specific thing, whether that's baseball, soccer, powerlifting, whatever, wrestling. Like it's a progressive, like a linear, like type progression they're going to see rather than just like, oh, I want to learn how to use exercise equipment and I have a problem showing up for myself.
Yeah.
But just kind of learning how to fix the root problem rather than just band-aiding it for a block and it getting worse, like giving them the time to like, okay, let's see how much we can load this through what range of motion or whatever the issue may be, whether it's coming back from a surgery. Like I've had several people post hysterectomy come to me because like that was how like my cervical cancer was. The second time was supposed to be fixed was through the total hysterectomy. So like that and like knowing how my stomach and muscles and all of that kind of like came back and my hormones were fluctuating through all of that. Like people see it as something relatable because I have that experience. But even with stuff like shoulders or things like that, it's so easy for us as coaches to go and learn how to fix it and just equip yourself better so then next time someone else comes with a similar issue, you have more knowledge. And then that way you've also fixed someone and they're happy because they feel better. They probably saved money because they didn't have to go to a physical therapist as often, or the problem just didn't get worse.
Yeah. Data collection, like you said, you deal with an issue one time, you get some strategies, you get some ideas and ideas on how to help it. You test it and see if it applies. And then, like you said, somewhere down the line, someone might have a similar issue and you've already got those strategies in place. And you can implement them and see if it's a similar or same issue. So Dr. Steph Albersworth is
Yes.
very good at that. He talks about that when you've injured yourself in a certain process, it's important to revisit that process and start rebuilding tissue capacity through it. Because like the problem is people go back to the movement itself. So if you hurt yourself barbell squatting, you don't necessarily go back to barbell squatting, but maybe you go back to body weight box squatting, 3 to 5 sets of 20 reps every single day, 3 to 5 times a day, and start getting exposure to the movement. Your body shuts its guarding system down, builds capacity, and then load and load and load progressively over
Exactly.
time with a tolerance level, which is pretty much what physical therapy is
Mm-hmm.
improving load tolerance to movements or joint angles or forces. So, I mean,
Exactly.
that's the best strategy you can have is understanding what the injury was. Okay, let's understand why, and let's see if we can strengthen what's missing from that key segment by doing it, but at an extremely regressed rate and build up over time.
Yeah, and that's the problem too, is just like explaining that to like people who I guess like more experienced lifters is not as big of a problem, but just like explaining to someone who's maybe gotten their feet wet and now has the fever and they're feeling stronger and now they tweaked something or strained something and they don't want to take that time to start again with just their body weight or the barbell or whatever it is, just to kind of like rebuild through like that range of motion. I always try to explain it to people as like a pyramid because you're only going to be as solid as that base is. No matter how tall you can get it, eventually if there's like a little like crack in it, it's going to crumble down again, no matter how strong you build back up. If you still just sealed it with duct tape instead of like actually making a strong base, it's going to crumble again.
I so frequently use the pyramid analogy because it's probably just because I'm Jewish, but like we built this, they're still there. Just follow the pyramid.
Yeah.
How do you like to deliver your information as far as like your programming aspects, both nutrition and through powerlifting program to your client?
All right. So right now I'm in a like weird business like state. Some of my athletes are mine that I acquired on my own, and some of them because I work with Tom Callis with Be Better. So some of them are through him, and for the ones that are with him, they use True Coach. And then the ones that I have gathered on my own, I send out a text message every week on whatever day they're supposed to get the programming. Um, just because I don't really like the apps. Sometimes
Same. I mean, they're convenient in some aspects, and they have a very pretty layout. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
same. I don't like because I can't see the entirety of the program when you just see a month worth versus everything in line. I can go back
Yeah.
week to week to week, and I also like the option of being able to write clear notes. And a lot of them don't let you write a lot of notes because it skews it up or changes things, or they
Yeah.
can't understand certain programming aspects like descending sets. If I want to do like 6-4-2 and different intensities for those, it gets jumbled and doesn't come out well. So I get that frustration because everyone asks,
Yeah.
why don't you use Train Heroic? I do for the group program at Train Heroic, or why don't you use True Coach, or why don't you use Sheets? And like, I don't like looking at things in squares. I like
Yeah.
looking at things in entirety, you know?
See, I do like looking at things in squares and grids, but like I guess I have that set up in my folder because each of my clients on my computer has a folder, and it has like their intake form, like any information they've ever given me, all their meets, like I've screenshot and attached like their open powerlifting stuff if they've competed or if they do compete. And so like as they send me stuff, whether like I have some that check in every time they go to the gym, and then I have some that wait until like the day before or whatever, the night before, excuse me, to check in. And I just kind of try to update it as I go. So that way, like whenever the day comes that they need their programming, I can just like copy and paste it from their folder and like send it out. And then I like it that way too, because since I have a MacBook and an Apple phone,
Thanks.
so like it syncs,
Here,
and so
one.
yeah. So if I'm traveling and in the car, like a good example was we went to Siesta Key this weekend, and like halfway through the drive back to Daytona, I had like a client have not a powerlifting emergency because those don't exist really,
Yes.
but like they're a military client of mine, and they got like last minute notice of like, oh, you're going here. She asked, can I get my stuff today so I can do it? And I was absolutely. And it was like halfway through the day, and she wanted to be able to get it in. So I asked him if he could drive, and because it had all synced up before we left, I was able to send it to her from my phone without having to set up my computer and all that.
That is a similar irrational fear that I often deal with because it syncs to my phone and it syncs to my MacBook computer, and they're lined up that if something happens, like sometimes you send an email, it doesn't go through. It gets lost in
Yeah.
space cloud, and you're in the middle of nowhere doing something. Someone's like, hey, I didn't get my program. Can you resend it? Like, yeah, and you just send it from your phone. It's right there. It's like,
Yeah, like
hey, you got to wait till I get home in 3 hours. I'm sorry. Like, boom, right there. I love that convenience aspect, and that's exactly why I do it. Yeah, it's not the most visually stunning, but it's the most efficient way that I can change something on the spot, look at something on the spot, answer a question on the spot, back and forth, or send out an emergency situation. Not that there's a true powerlifting emergency, but in a hastily manner.
yeah, and like most of my like I always let my athletes know because like that seems to be one of their like questions too that they have for me because I do think clients or prospective clients should be asking questions for coaches or prospective coaches is they always it seems to be they always ask well, how do you do your programming or how do you send it out, like not necessarily a style of programming, but
Sure.
like how do you send it out? And I'll be like, honestly, like if it's cool with you, I don't use any apps. I just send it in a text message. If you prefer an email, I can do that. If you really want me to, I can throw it in a sheet. But and usually they're like, oh no, that's perfect. I'll just write it down on like a notebook or something because like half of them do
Yeah.
that. So
The only reason I mean, I use the email and I put it through because they can communicate to the email channel and then they can also write their notes. That's the easiest way to give your coach to
mhm.
recap. If they sent you an email, you can write the training days down and a notes for each day and send it right back to the coach very easily, which yet half the clients still don't know how to do that or want to do that, but it's the easiest thing for them to do. But I avoid giving them my phone number because I do try and protect my own personal boundaries in time and
Mhm.
space, but clientele level is pretty high. So it's one of those things where I don't want text messages 24 hours a day. So I filtered that message system towards Instagram where they can message me or through email where they can message me as
Yeah,
much as they want, but they're going to understand that I'm not going to be able to get back to them immediately unless it's something that needs to be addressed immediately.
yeah. And on
I
my
never,
intake,
go ahead.
or go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was
There's
going
like
to
a
say, like,
lag, I guess. I
I was going to say, like, I usually will not go on Instagram until after 1 p.m. I'll focus on my daily task first in the morning, getting work done, training, doing those things, whatever you need done, and then I will go on there and answer everyone's questions, review everyone's videos, give them critique and feedback. And I've taken to using a lot of voice notes, which helps a lot of people, and it makes my time more efficient when they can hear the directions instead of trying to read.
do that too.
They may not understand anatomical terminology sometimes, so it helps digest that as well. But there are cases where it still can drop down. So if someone's messaging me like, "Hey, I'm going to the gym in an hour and the program didn't come through on Wednesday," I could resend it because I can see it. So it still gives me
Exactly.
that access without it gives me access to them without access to them to me back in less time.
Yeah, and on my intake form, I definitely have like my business hours laid out because even though like this is my full time thing, I do like have a family. I do have daily things I have to do. I have people I need to like be doing things for, and myself. So like in my intake form, it says like, hey, I have business hours. You'll hear back from me in 24 hours from whatever. If it's an emergency, like a couple times I've had people be like, I'm doing like a heavy single tomorrow. Can you have your phone? I'm like, absolutely, because you gave me enough time that I can add that to my schedule of things because it is my job. Like I can add that to the schedule because you gave me enough time and notice. So it just comes to like communication, like and respecting those boundaries. But like I'm very, very fortunate that I would say 99.9% of my athletes are very respectful of my like boundaries I have in my business hours that I have or office hours, whatever you want to call them. And I think the only times I kind of like feel like I'm slipping up on my end is I have all my Android clients have to use WhatsApp because
The video otherwise won't come through.
yeah, or it comes in like super tiny. So
Yeah.
because I have WhatsApp muted just
Yeah.
because of their group chats I'm in, like sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go like make sure there's no notifications in here.
Same. I have like two clients who will message me through WhatsApp because they got rid of their Instagram, and that's the only other way that I make sure the videos are. It doesn't matter if I shoot with a phone, a camera, whatever. It comes through normal, just like it does on Instagram. But I also have it muted because people would add you to group things, and you get like ping, 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 ping.
Yeah. So like
So,
yeah.
oh shit. Yeah.
So if you're
Very
one of my
safe.
Android clients, I'm sorry, I don't hate you.
I just tell them they're psycho. Anytime I see a green bubble pop up, I'm like, what are you, psycho? Get an iPhone.
I know I'm like laughing because like I actually really enjoy. I only have three Android clients right now, but I really enjoy them all, and I always talk to them like, if you guys were not cool, I would totally fire you guys for having Android. But they're all cool. No, I'm joking.
I have one client. I feel so bad for her, Devin, because every one of her videos she sends almost every time come through as like still photos instead of actual videos because she has like horrendously bad service through like T-Mobile or something.
Oh
I'm
no.
like, I'm sorry, my phone hates you.
Yeah, I have one who he trains like in West Virginia, and I think it's at like Brandon Franklin's gym, and it's
Hmm.
like in this like weird like BFE like metal. It has to be metal because anytime my athlete from there sends me, he has an
You get the
iPhone, but
micro.
his just like
Yeah.
so tiny, and I'm like, can you send it again?
It just means they're in a very low signal area. Yeah, it
Yeah.
struggles to come through. I can relate to that. All right, so let's talk. So we talked about resources you like to follow. We talked about how you like to deliver your programming. How do athletes reach out to you for nutrition coaching, or powerlifting programming?
So for the nutrition part of it, just for like legal purposes, I do work with a registered dietitian. So that way, anything we do together, it's like ultimately ran through someone like who is responsible and licensed in that area.
Hmm.
So we work together for that part of it, and she has her own spreadsheet. But people can reach out to me via email or Instagram, and I can get them set up doing that. As far as powerlifting coaching goes, they can either go to the Be Better Instagram for Tom Callis, or they can reach out to me and I can send them the link that sends them there.
Okay, awesome, really good.
Yeah.
And what about the girls? They're loving their pool life in Florida.
Yeah, I think they're out there right now. I don't know if it started raining again. I don't have my headphones on. My new hearing aids I got like actually like let me use them as headphones, so I really
Oh,
can't hear anything else other than you.
that's one I left out is your military background.
Oh yeah,
Trish,
we don't have to explain
Tricia has
that.
like 70 years of life experience packed into 30. So all of us should be feeling really lazy right now.
No. I just don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and then I get sick or whatever, and then things just don't line up the way they
See, if you
feel
were a
like they
male,
should.
this would be Peter Pan syndrome if you were a male. I don't know what the female version is. Maybe it's like Tinkerbell syndrome.
Something.
All right. Well, awesome. I appreciate you joining me today and sharing
Yes,
some
thank you.
time. These, of course, will be uploaded to YouTube as well. I'll send you the links so you have the conversation on YouTube that you can post as well and share. And next week, I'm going to have Stu Locke on from
Oh,
Kodiak Barber, which will be
here's
fun.
another good one I love using as a
Yeah,
resource.
he's really stepped up his game on putting out insightful posts, and insightful content, and educational content. And he's one of the presenters and teachers along with Prescript for their barbell course. So he'll be a fun one to have on next Wednesday. He's joining me next Wednesday at, I believe, 5 p.m. Eastern. So we'll have
Nice.
Stu on. And I get to use my network of connections of all these people that I know and get to talk to on a regular basis and have an actual conversation with them and not just DM each other back and forth.
Yeah, it's really cool because he's in Jacksonville now too. So
Yeah, he's in Jacksonville. I still have yet to meet the man in person yet. We both live in the same state, 4 hours away. So we'll get there. All right, Trish.
all
I
right.
appreciate you joining me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one.